Edu White was from Awka in Anambra State. He was in his 50s and known mainly for his block industry business. The business was his major source of income and had been running for many years. Edu produced blocks for builders and contractors, and this helped him live a stable and comfortable life. He was not rich in a flashy way, but he lacked nothing. His needs were met and his life was settled. Edu was not married, even in his 50s. People around him noticed this, but he did not see it as a problem. Marriage was not a measure of success to him. What mattered more was peace of mind and financial stability. He lived alone, managed his business, and kept his personal life private. He avoided unnecessary attention and did not involve himself in other people's matters. Behind Edu's calm lifestyle was a strong and serious past. He was a member of the Black Axe confraternity. In 1996, he held a very high position in the group. At that time, he was the #1 leader of the Black Axe. This position placed him at the top with authority and control. It was a period when power, loyalty, and influence meant everything within the confraternity. Edu was respected and feared during those years. As time passed, Edu reduced his involvement in active confraternity matters. He became more focused on business and personal survival. He understood that age and experience required a different approach to life. The energy and risks of his younger years were no longer suitable for him. He chose to be more careful and controlled in how he lived. Edu also had a strong family connection that shaped his behavior. He was related to a commissioner of police in southwestern Nigeria. This relationship was known in certain circles, though Edu never spoke openly about it. The connection brought a level of protection, but it also demanded discipline. Edu knew that his actions could reflect on his family name. Because of this, he stayed quiet and avoided public trouble. Despite his past, Edu was doing well for himself. His business provided steady income and he did not depend on anyone for support. He paid his workers, maintained his equipment, and handled his affairs responsibly. He lived within his means and planned carefully for the future. Comfort for him meant stability, not luxury. Edu's life showed a man who had experienced power and danger, but now chose balance and control. He did not deny who he was or where he came from. His past as a former Black Axe #1 was part of his identity, but it no longer defined his daily life. At this stage, Edu White was a man in his 50s, comfortable, focused on business, and careful about how he moved in the world.
There was a brutal clash between the Vikings and the Black Axe in Awka, Anambra State. The clash was not surprising to the people of the area. Awka and its surrounding communities have a long history of cult violence. For many years, the conflict between these two groups has continued without a clear end. Because of this, Awka is often described as having the oldest running cult conflict in southeastern Nigeria. The rivalry between the Vikings and the Black Axe in Awka has lasted for decades. It started many years ago and continued as new members replaced old ones. Each generation inherited the same hatred, the same anger, and the same desire for control. The names changed, faces changed, but the conflict remained the same. This long history made every clash more dangerous than the last. The recent clash was especially brutal because it was driven by unresolved issues from the past. Old disputes over territory, influence, and respect were still active. Neither side was willing to back down. Each group believed it had the right to dominate certain areas in Awka and its environs. This belief kept the rivalry alive and strong. Awka's location also played a role in the long conflict. The town connects several nearby communities, making it an important area for control. Over the years, both the Vikings and the Black Axe tried to maintain presence and influence there. This constant struggle turned Awka into a central point of confrontation. The surrounding towns were also affected because the conflict did not stay in one place. The clash showed how deeply rooted the problem was. It was not a new fight or a sudden misunderstanding. It was the result of years of revenge and retaliation. Every attack in the past created the reason for another attack in the future. This cycle kept repeating itself without pause. Because the conflict had lasted so long, it became part of Awka's story. Many people grew up knowing only tension between the Vikings and the Black Axe. Peace was short, and violence returned again and again. The recent brutal clash only confirmed what many already knew. The cult conflict in Awka and its environs was old, deeply rooted, and still very active in southeastern Nigeria.
The violence between the Black Axe and the Vikings took a serious turn after a single act meant to settle an old score. A member of the Black Axe executed a Viking member named Chimobi. The reason was not new. It was linked to a past issue that had remained unresolved for a long time. The act was meant to close that chapter, but instead it reopened a much bigger conflict. Chimobi's execution did not end anything. It only created anger and a strong desire for revenge. The Vikings saw it as a direct attack on their group and their pride. To them, it was not just about Chimobi as an individual, but about sending a message. They believed the Black Axe had crossed a line that could not be ignored. In response, the Vikings carried out a retaliation. They executed Chekwene, a member of the Black Axe. Chekwene was known as a good man. He was also a father of 4 children. His death shocked many people because he was not seen as someone who deserved such an end. However, in the logic of cult rivalry, personal character often means nothing. What mattered was his identity as a Black Axe member. Chekwene's execution deepened the conflict. It showed that the situation had moved beyond warnings and threats. Both sides were now responding with direct action. Each fall created another reason for revenge. The cycle continued without pause, driven by anger and loyalty to group identity. After Chekwene's fall, the Vikings did not stop there. They went further by targeting Edu White. Edu was a known figure, both because of his past role in the Black Axe and his long-standing presence in Anambra State. Even though he was older and less active, his name still carried weight as the former number 1. To the Vikings, he was not just an individual, but a symbol. On the 11th of January 2026, the Vikings tracked Edu White. They located him at Obuekwe Street, Amikwo, Awka. There, Edu White was taken down. His fall marked a major moment in the conflict. It showed that age, status, or past position offered no protection once someone was identified as a target. The execution of Edu White confirmed that the conflict had entered a dangerous stage. It was no longer limited to younger or active members. Former leaders and older figures were now involved. This made the situation more serious and more unpredictable. What began as an attempt to settle an old score had now resulted in multiple falls. Chimobi's execution led to Chekwene's fall. Chekwene's fall led to the execution of Edu White. Each action triggered another, showing how cult violence feeds on itself. The events made it clear that retaliation had become the main rule guiding the conflict between the Vikings and the Black Axe.
Edu White was loved by many people who knew him closely, and even by those who only knew him through his work. Over the years, he had built a reputation that went beyond his past in the confraternity. To many, he was a businessman, an elder, and a man who had settled into a quiet life. His block industry supported families, and his presence in the community was calm and steady. People respected him for how he lived in his later years. Although Edu had a strong history in the Black Axe, he was no longer active in confraternity life. He had retired from that world many years earlier. His focus was on business and personal peace. He did not move around with young boys. He did not always attend meetings or take part in conflicts. In his mind, that chapter of his life was closed. He believed age and time had placed him beyond such battles. Many people believed the same thing. They saw Edu as someone who had paid his dues in life and deserved to grow old in peace. Some younger people even looked up to him as an example of how to leave the streets and focus on something productive. To them, Edu represented survival and change. He was proof that a person could step away and still live well. Despite this, his past never truly left him. In the world of cult rivalry, retirement is not always respected. Old titles still carry weight, and old names still attract attention. Even though Edu was in his 50s, his history as a former #1 of the Black Axe was not forgotten. To rivals, he remained a symbol of the group they opposed. When the conflict between the Vikings and the Black Axe intensified, those old memories returned. The executing that happened before created a mood of revenge and bitterness. In such moments, logic and mercy disappear. Rivals no longer look at age, current lifestyle, or personal character. They only see affiliation and past influence. Edu's love within the community did not protect him. His retirement did not protect him. His age did not protect him. The rivals did not care that he had stepped away from confraternity life. They did not care that he was no longer active. To them, he was still Edu White of the Black Axe. That was enough reason. His fall shocked many people because it showed how unforgiving cult rivalry can be. It showed that once a person is marked by a group identity, that mark can last a lifetime. Even decades of quiet living may not erase it. Edu had lived carefully and responsibly, but the past still caught up with him. People who loved Edu struggled to understand why he was targeted. They saw him as a man who had moved on and was contributing positively to society. They asked why someone who had retired and chosen peace would still be taken down. The answer was painful but simple. In cult wars, enemies do not separate the past from the present. Edu White's fall sent a clear message. It showed that cult violence has no respect for age or change. It does not recognize growth or regret. It only recognizes old grudges and group identity. His rise and fall became a reminder that involvement in such groups can follow a person forever. In the end, Edu was not taken down because of what he was doing in his 50s. He was taken down because of who he had been many years earlier. The love people had for him could not stop it. His decision to retire could not stop it. His age could not stop it. The rivals did not care. Edu White had no children and no wife. He lived his entire life as a single man. This fact became more painful after his fall. There was no son or daughter to mourn him as a father. There was no wife to speak as a partner who shared his life. When Edu was gone, he was truly alone in the underworld, just as he had been alone in marriage and family while alive. Because Edu had no children, there was nobody to naturally take over his block industry business. The business he built with years of effort suddenly had no clear future. There was no family successor to continue the work, manage the workers, or protect what he had created. Everything he worked for was left hanging, uncertain and exposed. His fall did not only end a life, it ended a personal legacy. People began to ask questions about what would happen next. The machines, the land, and the daily operations all depended on Edu while he was alive. Without him, the business lost its direction. This showed one of the quiet realities of his life. Even though he was comfortable and successful, his life ended without continuity. What he built had no one directly linked to him to carry it forward. Edu's story ended suddenly and completely. There were no second chances, no time to correct anything, no room for reflection. He was gone and gone forever. His age, his retirement from confraternity life, and his peaceful lifestyle did not change the final outcome. Death closed his chapter permanently. While Edu's life came to an end, the conflict that surrounded his fall did not stop. The long-time rivalry between the Black Axe and the Vikings continued. His execution did not bring peace. It did not settle the conflict. Instead, it became another point in a long list of losses on both sides. One more name was added to a history already filled with blood. This showed the true nature of the conflict. Individuals die, but the rivalry remains. People are taken down, but the cycle continues. Edu's fall did not mark the end of anything. It only proved that the conflict was bigger than any single person. Both confraternities had lost members before, and they would likely lose more. The continued conflict made Edu's fall feel even more empty. There was no victory in it. There was no lesson learned by those involved. The violence moved on, searching for the next target. Edu became another example of how cult rivalry consumes lives without offering anything in return. His story highlighted the cost of a life touched by confraternity involvement. Even after retirement, even after choosing a quieter path, the past still reached him. His lack of family made the ending even more final. There was no personal bloodline to remember him, only memories held by friends and associates.
In the end, Edu White's life ended without heirs, without closure, and without peace. His business stood without an owner. His name became another chapter in a long and painful conflict. And as the rivalry between the Black Axe and the Vikings continued, it became clear that while people may disappear, the violence refuses to end. This story is told to educate and to create awareness. It is not told to praise violence or glorify confraternities. It is told so people can learn from what happened to Edu White and understand the true cost of cultism. Edu's rise and fall carry a clear message that should not be ignored. Look at Edu White today. He is nowhere to be found. A man who once had power, respect, and comfort is gone completely. His age did not save him. His retirement from confraternity life did not save him. His quiet lifestyle did not save him. In the end, none of these things mattered. His past involvement followed him until his last day. Edu believed he had moved on. He focused on business and lived carefully. He avoided trouble and stayed away from active confraternity life. Yet, when violence returned, he was not spared. This shows a painful truth. Once a person is involved in cultism, walking away does not always erase the mark. The history remains, and rivals may not care about change or growth. Edu's fall shows how unforgiving cult rivalry can be. It does not respect age. It does not respect retirement. It does not respect personal progress. It only recognizes group identity and old grudges. This is why cultism is dangerous. It traps people in a cycle that can last a lifetime. Many young people believe they can join a confraternity for protection, power, or respect, and later leave when they are ready. Edu's story challenges that belief. He joined, rose to the top, and later stepped back. Still, his past caught up with him. This makes it clear that cultism is not something you can easily escape. The consequences do not stop with death alone. Edu had no wife and no children. His business had no one to take it over. Everything he built ended with him. This is another cost of a life tied to violence and secrecy. When the end comes, there may be nothing left behind except pain and questions. This story is a warning. It shows that cultism does not give lasting protection. It does not guarantee safety in old age. It does not promise peace. Instead, it creates enemies that can wait for years before striking. It turns the past into a permanent threat. Reject cultism. That is the lesson in Edu's story. No matter how powerful someone becomes, cultism always demands a price.
Sometimes that price is paid many years later. Sometimes it is paid when a person believes they are finally safe. Edu White's story is not unique, but it is clear. A life connected to cultism is never truly free. The safest choice is not to join at all. This story is told so others can choose differently and avoid the path that led Edu to an ending that could not be undone. This content is for educational purposes only. We don't support cultism.